Montana Territory, 1877. The wind came off the hills sharp and dry the day the town of Birch Creek watched Penelope Vance walk down Main Street with her chin up and her scarf shining in the sun. Most folks looked away, or worse, looked right at her like she was something to pity or whisper about. Some women crossed the street. A few men grinned like they meant to be cruel. Kids pointed. Penelope kept walking, skirts brushing dust, spine straight, like none of it touched her. It did. She passed the Mercantile where Mrs. Morrow's voice cut through the still air. That face of hers could curdle milk. Penelope did not flinch. She never flinched. Not since the fire 5 years ago. Not since the ceiling beam collapsed, trapping her inside the old house while it burned. She had been 22 then, pretty once people used to say so. Now, half her face bore the memory of flame. The right side was smooth, untouched. The left was a map of pain, twisted pink and silver, her eye forever narrowed. She had come back to Birch Creek because her father's land needed tending. After he passed last winter, she had no one else. The house was still standing barely. She kept to herself, rode into town for supplies once a week, and tried not to hear what people said. But that day, her wagon wheel cracked. She was kneeling beside it, skirts tucked up, hands dirt-covered, when a voice behind her said, "You need a hand?" Penelope turned. The man was tall, hat tilted back, sun in his dark blonde hair. He had sharp, handsome angles to his face, high cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it knew both laughter and sorrow. His shirt was rolled to the elbows, work-worn hands already reaching for the wheel. His eyes were a startling, steady gray. She frowned. "I can manage." He crouched anyway. "Not saying you cannot. Just saying I am here." She studied him. "You are not from town?" "No, ma'am. Just bought the old Whitlow ranch east of the ridge." "Gabriel Winslow." She hesitated. "Penelope Vance." He nodded. "Heard about you. Folks talk." "I know. I do not listen much to what people say." She blinked. He didn't flinch when he saw her face. Most people did. His eyes never dropped from hers, not once. They fixed the wheel together. She worked in silence. He worked easy, quiet, not pushing conversation. When they finished, he dusted off his hands and tipped his hat. "Nice to meet you, Miss Vance." She nodded. "Thank you." Then he walked away like he had not done anything special. But for the first time in years, Penelope's chest felt less tight. Not because he helped, but because he looked at her like she was not broken. 2 days later, he rode up to her gate. She was hauling water from the well and wiped her brow when she saw him. "You lost?" "No," he said. "Brought you something." He handed her a sack, flour, sugar, coffee, 2 candles. "I do not need charity." "Not charity." "You loan me your wheel wrench. This is fair trade." She narrowed her eyes. "I never gave you a." He grinned. "Then I borrowed it without asking. Still fair." She stared at him. He just stood there, calm as the sky. Finally, she opened the gate wider. "Fine. Coffee's on the stove." He followed her in. The house was plain, clean, quiet. Some of the wallpaper peeled. A shelf of books stood by the window. He noticed a small painting on the wall her before. The face unscarred. She caught him looking. "Burned down the summer of '72. She said flatly. "My father got me out. I was not fast enough." He nodded once. "I am sorry." She turned back to the coffee. "Most people pretend not to look. You do not. I do not think you need pretending." That stopped her. They sat, drank in silence. Outside, the wind picked up. "You always live alone?" he asked. "Since the fire," she said. "Before that, I thought I would marry. Maybe have children. That changed." He looked at her, long and quiet. "It does not have to stay changed," he said. She looked down into her cup. Her hands trembled slightly. That night, she watched him ride away, dust trailing behind. The next week, he returned with fence wire. Said you got cattle? Fence is falling. I did not ask for help. Still giving it. She shook her head but let him in. They worked side by side. He did not talk much unless she did. He told her about his ranch, how it had sat empty for years. He had no family left, just wanted land, quiet, a place to make something grow. Penelope started talking more. About her father. The creek that ran behind the barn. The way the wind changed before rain. Every day he came, people in town noticed. Gabriel Winslow helping the scarred woman. Gabriel Winslow riding with her into town, carrying her flour sack. Gabriel Winslow tipping his hat to her like she was the finest lady in the territory. And every day, Penelope stood a little straighter. Then came the church social. She did not plan to go. She never did. But that morning, a wrapped parcel showed up on her porch. Inside was a dress, soft blue cotton, simple, beautiful. No note. But she knew. She wore it. When she stepped into the churchyard, every head turned. Conversation stalled. She felt the weight of it, eyes on her face, her scars, her beauty. Then Gabriel was there, offering his arm. You look like the sky, he said. She blinked hard. He led her through the crowd like she was royalty. Like he did not see the whispers. Like none of it mattered. And slowly it stopped. People started nodding. Smiling even. The mocking faded. Because Gabriel Winslow looked at her like she was the only woman that ever lived. That night, under the strings of lanterns, he asked her to dance. I have not danced since. You will now. He pulled her close, hand warm at her waist. She rested her scarred cheek against his chest, and for the first time in 5 years, she closed her eyes and felt safe. When the music ended, he did not let go. I want to come back every day, he said. She looked up at him, heart pounding. Then do. He kissed her, soft and sure. And everyone saw. The town that once mocked her scarred face now saw her through his eyes. And she was beautiful. Gabriel came just after dawn the next morning, his horse tied at the post and steam rising from its flanks. Penelope was in the barn, brushing down her only milk cow, when she heard the gate creak open. She didn't call out. He didn't announce himself. Thought I'd come early, he said from the doorway, voice low like he was trying not to wake the day too fast. She didn't turn yet. You always bring gifts this time of morning? He stepped inside, boots soft in the hay. No parcel today. Just thought I'd help mend that eastern wall before the wind pulls it down. She looked over her shoulder, braids swinging. You noticed that? He shrugged. Hard not to. Last time I leaned on it, it leaned back. She handed him a hammer without speaking more. They worked side by side without fuss, nails driven in with the rhythm of people who knew how to use their hands. A few times their fingers brushed, but neither said anything about it. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, the wall stood straight again. Gabriel leaned against the post and looked out toward the edge of her land. You ever think of growing rye out past the orchard? Too stony. He nodded. Could clear it. Deep plow, haul the rock. She wiped her hands on her apron. That'd take weeks? I got weeks. She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, You always looking for work, Gabriel? No, he said. Just reasons to stay. That silenced her. She turned away, but something in her shoulders slackened. Later, he helped her lift the last of the potatoes from the root cellar. She handed him a basket to fill and lit the stub of a lantern so they could see better. The air was cool, the scent of earth and burlap strong in the dark. You always this quiet? She asked after a while. I talk when it matters. And when does it matter? He looked at her then, really looked. When someone's worth hearing. She set her basket down a little too hard. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough, he said. I've seen how you hold yourself when folks look too long. I've seen how you don't flinch when they do. That's just surviving. No, he said, voice firm. That's strength. She didn't know what to do with that. So she didn't say anything at all. They walked back to the house through the orchard. The trees were bare now, stripped by frost, but she reached out and touched one of the thicker trunks with her palm. My mother planted these, she said. One each year, until she couldn't any more. Said the land should remember her. She passed? Penelope nodded. When I was 17. Fever. My father carved her a stone himself. Gabriel took off his hat. I'd like to see it sometime. She looked at him, puzzled. Why? Because it mattered to you. And I want to know the things that matter to you. She didn't answer, but the silence between them felt different than before. Not avoidance, not fear. Just the kind that held space for something growing. That evening she made stew. He stayed. They ate without talking much, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just warm, like the fire burning low in the hearth. Afterward she packed away the bowls and he stood by the door, not quite ready to leave. I'll be back in the morning, he said. I didn't ask you to. He smiled, slow and quiet. No. But I hope you want me to. She looked up at him, her face unreadable. I do. He tipped his hat and stepped out into the cold, and she stood there long after he'd gone, her hand resting on the doorframe, heart too full for words. The following morning brought a soft layer of frost across the grass, the kind that turned fence posts silver and made the pump handle bite at the palm. Penelope was already outside feeding the hens when Gabriel tied his horse to the rail. He carried a bundle under one arm and a length of rope coiled over his shoulder. She didn't ask what he was doing, just pointed her chin toward the shed. More repairs? She asked. Not quite, he said. Brought seed for winter squash. Figured we could turn the south patch. She wiped her hands on her skirt. You planning to stay through planting season? I was hoping to stay through every season. He said it evenly, not rushed, not heavy. Just fact. Penelope didn't respond right away. Her breath clouded in the cold, and she watched it drift. I don't know what to do with that, she said finally. I'm not asking for anything today, he replied. Just thought we'd start with squash. They didn't speak again until the soil was broken and rows marked. He handed her a hoe and she moved beside him, shoulders brushing when they bent to tamp the dirt. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead and the silence between them felt like something earned. Later, Gabriel unwrapped the bundle. He brought a pair of leather gloves, worn but well-stitched. They were my sister's, he said. She passed some years back. I reckon she'd have liked you. Penelope turned them in her hands. The lining was clean, the cuffs hand-tooled with a small flower pattern. You sure about this? She asked. She never much cared for keepsakes. Said hands were meant to be used. She slid them on. They fit. That afternoon they sat beneath the butternut tree behind the barn, where the sun still reached despite the season. Penelope peeled apples with a small paring knife while Gabriel carved a new handle for her hay fork. I used to think I'd leave this place, she said, not looking at him. After the fire. After he died. I didn't want to be the girl folks stared at. Gabriel didn't interrupt. His knife moved in steady strokes. But I couldn't leave his grave, she continued. Or the orchard. Or the creek. It's all I had left. You ever think maybe it's not all you've got anymore? She glanced at him, then sharp, uncertain. He didn't look away. I don't need a ring or a promise. But I'd like a place at your table, if you'll have me. She stared at him, hands still, blade resting against the apple skin. I don't know how to be with someone, she said. Not anymore. You don't need to, he said. Just be with me. His voice wasn't pleading. Just open. She set the apple aside. You're not afraid of what people say. I've heard worse said about better folk. Doesn't mean any of it's true. She looked down at her lap, then back to him. I don't have soft words. I'm not asking for them. He held her gaze, and slowly she moved closer. Not much, just enough for their knees to touch. I don't want to be pitted. You're not. The wind stirred the branches overhead. One dry leaf landed between them. Penelope took a breath. If you're staying, she said, you'll need to build a new chicken coop. The old one leaks. Gabriel nodded once. Then I'll start tomorrow. That night he stayed for supper again. After the dishes were done, they sat by the fire. No words. Just quiet heat, and the soft tick of pine sap burning in the hearth. She didn't look at him when she reached across the space between their chairs and laid her hand over his. She didn't need to. The first snow came early that year, light at first, then steady, blanketing the ridge and covering the ground in a hush. Penelope stood on her porch with a wool shawl around her shoulders, watching flakes catch in the orchard branches. Gabriel was chopping wood near the barn, sleeves rolled, breath fogging as he worked. She stepped down the stairs with measured steps, boots crunching in the fresh powder. There's a sawbuck in the shed, she said. You'll save your back using it. He paused, axe balanced in his hand. I like the rhythm of it this way. You're stubborn. He smiled, only with his eyes. You've known that long as I've been showing up. She didn't argue. Instead, she bent and picked up a split log, stacking it against the wall. Town's hosting a winter fair, he said after a few moments. Week from Saturday. Livestock judging, pie auction, some music. She brushed snow off the fence rail. I haven't gone before. I'd like to walk with you there. She studied his face, not the shape of it, but what lived behind it. There was no expectation in his voice, only invitation. I don't bake pies, she said, not quite answering. They'll survive. A crow called from the tree line. The cold had brought silence, and every sound felt sharper in it. I never come back from town feeling better than when I rode in, she said. I know. She looked at him again. Do you? I've seen the way they look at you. What I don't see is why it should stop you from living. Her jaw tightened. It's not just them. It's me. I don't know how to belong anymore. You belong where you decide to. She let that sit between them for a while. Then she turned toward the house. There's stew warming on the stove. Come in before your hands freeze off. Inside, the windows fogged with heat. She poured 2 bowls and set them on the table without ceremony. They ate quietly, snow ticking against the panes. Afterward, Gabriel unwrapped a cloth bundle from his coat. I brought something, he said, laying it on the table. The cloth held a carving small, smooth, whittled from pine. A horse with its head lowered and one ear turned back, like it was listening. Reminded me of your mare, he said. She ran her fingers along the grain. You made this? He nodded. I've never been given anything like it. I thought maybe it'd keep you company when the house gets quiet. She turned the figure in her hands. You make things quietly, she said. So do you. She looked up. What do I make? He met her eyes. A life. Out of what little's left. That's not nothing. She stood slowly, arms crossed against the draft that crept in from the door. I used to think if I ignored what was taken from me, it might not feel so large. And it still does. But it doesn't feel as heavy when you're here. He rose too, stepping around the table. For a long moment he didn't touch her, just stood near enough for her to feel the heat off his coat. I'd like to stay through the winter, he said. Not just the days. Nights too. She didn't look away. You want to live here? He nodded. If you'll have me. Her voice was quiet. There's only one bed. I'll sleep on the floor. Or the barn. I'm not coming for comfort. I'm coming for you. She stepped forward then, one hand resting lightly over his heart. I don't want you on the floor. He took her hand in his. Then tell me where you want me. She didn't answer with words. That night he stayed. The fire burned low, and the wind howled, but Penelope lay warm beside him, her hand curled beneath his, the carved horse resting on the windowsill. The snow kept falling. The silence outside was endless. But the house no longer felt empty. The first time Penelope laughed in front of him, really laughed, it was because of a goat. The creature had wandered through a broken section of the fence Gabriel had meant to fix and proceeded to chew the edge of her laundry line, dragging a petticoat halfway across the yard. Gabriel chased it, slipping in the thawed mud, landing hard on one knee and cursing under his breath. Penelope stood barefoot on the porch, arms crossed, watching the entire scene until her shoulders shook and the sound broke free, a rich, surprised laugh that startled even her. Gabriel stood, panting, holding the goat by its scruff. "That funny to you?" She nodded, breathless. "You've got mud on your teeth." He grinned, wide and unbothered. "That your way of saying thank you for saving your underthings?" She picked up a bucket and tossed him the rag inside. "That's my way of saying don't forget the fence again." They replaced the slats together that afternoon, Gabriel's hands still smudged with clay. As they worked, she told him things she hadn't spoken aloud in years. How the orchard used to be her hiding place when the world felt too loud. How she'd once built a raft from fence rails and nearly drowned trying to float it in the creek. How there was a place under the bluff where wild lavender grew in the spring if you knew where to look. Gabriel listened, always without interrupting. When she paused, he asked her questions not to push, but to understand. That evening, they sat outside with their mugs, watching the stars. The snow had melted from the grass, and the air smelled like damp earth and pine. "You ever think about expanding the barn?" he asked. She tilted her head. "To what end?" "Could take in another cow. Maybe a few lambs. Do more with the land." She considered that. "Wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing is." She took a sip, thoughtful. "If we did it, I'd want to do it right. Not patchwork. We could start with lumber from my place. There's old beams in the storage shed, solid wood. You'd give up part of your ranch for this?" He looked at her, unwavering. "This is my ranch now." Penelope's chest tightened, but not with fear. She reached for his calloused hand and laced her fingers through his. "Then we start in spring." The next weeks passed in slow, honest labor. Gabriel sold off the last of his cattle to a trader passing through and moved the rest of his belongings into the back room of the house, where he built a sturdy trunk for her mother's keepsakes and hung his rifle above the door, just beside hers. Penelope cleared space in the old ledger for shared accounts, and together they planned out the planting rows, arguing gently over spacing and seed types until both agreed on rye and turnips and a patch of sweet peas for the southern wall. They did not speak of marriage in grand terms. There were no rings or town ceremonies. But one morning she took the small blue dress he'd given her months ago and sewed a matching shirt from the same fabric, wide enough for his shoulders. When she handed it to him, he understood without needing explanation. That Sunday, they wore them to the chapel together. Folks watched them enter, and this time, no one whispered. The pastor offered a nod of respect. After the service, Mrs. Morrow approached with a tin of preserves and an apology in her eyes that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Penelope accepted it without flinching. In the months that followed, the orchard bloomed again. They dug new fence posts, raised a chicken coop with a slanted roof, and planted squash where the earth had once been rocky and bare. Gabriel carved a second horse for the windowsill, this one with its head lifted high. A letter arrived from Helena in late summer, offering Penelope compensation for her father's service during the war, land credit, and a modest pension owed, delayed by bureaucratic error. She read it twice, then folded it neatly and tucked it under the flour tin. "We could build more," Gabriel said when she told him. "Expand the house. Add a room with real glass windows." She shook her head. "Let's save it for what comes next." And what came next was quiet, steady love, the kind that did not need proving. He brought her wildflowers from the bluff when the lavender bloomed, and she stitched a quilt for the bed they now shared, its corners precise, its weight comforting. One evening in late October, Penelope stood at the edge of the orchard, watching the wind move through the leaves. Gabriel came up behind her, resting a hand lightly on her hip. You thinking of her? He asked. Penelope nodded. And him, too. They'd be proud of what you've done here. She leaned against him. Of what we've done. He turned her toward him, brushing a leaf from her hair. You know I love you? She nodded, eyes soft. I've known since the first time you didn't look away. They kissed there, under the trees her mother once planted, and the wind moved around them like a blessing. That winter, they didn't just survive. They lived. And when spring came again, the sweet peas bloomed in the corner of the yard, bright and strong, just like everything else they'd built.